You're watching Let the Quran Speak. Now we answer questions we've received from you, our viewers, and if you have a question yourself, you can visit our website, www.quranspeaks.com. Okay, Brother Shabir, the first question is about Quranic scriptures found in Yemen in the 1970s, and the person is asking, is it really different from the Quran that we have today?
The reports about this finding have been sparse. Gerhard Puhn, the German scholar who was at the forefront of working with this, had written only a brief article about this, and he said that more would be forthcoming, but we haven't heard much more from him. What he had said so far is that some of the manuscripts show a different ordering of the surahs than we have them now in the Quran, and that some show some slight variations in the readings as we have them in the standard text. Mm-hmm. Well, neither of these findings really is upsetting to the traditional Muslim scholarship, because, for one, it was largely recognized among early Muslims that the order of the surahs as we have them now is not fixed by God and given to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, by divine revelation. It was widely accepted that the companions of the Prophet have decided to order the Quran in this particular sequence. And for this reason, some have said that as we recite the surahs, even in the prayer, it is not necessary to keep the order as they appear in the Quranic text now, because this is not divinely given. And in the end, it is widely recognized as well that the order of the surahs do not affect the meanings. Mm-hmm. In other words, it makes no difference whether you read Surah 2 first and 3 second, or whether you read Surah 3 first and 2 second, because each surah is a contained unit by itself, and the meaning of each surah is not affected by its placement vis-a-vis the other surahs.
But why was the order different? Was it, was it codified in a different place, collected in a different place, or something?
Well,
like this?
If we go back to reports about how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught the Quran, so he would receive a certain piece of revelation, and then he would tell his companions, okay, this new piece goes in such and such a surah where such and such is mentioned, so they know the exact place where to place this new piece of revelation within that surah. Mm-hmm. But there is nothing that goes back to him authentically to say that he said that the surahs of the Quran must be in this particular order. First Surah Fatiha, then Surah Al-Baqarah, then Surah Al-Imran, then Surah Al-Nisa, and so on. It is noted in some reports that in some of his public recitations that he recited Surah 1, then he went to 2, then 3, as we have them now. Because of the way that is reported that he taught the Quran, each surah was a unit by itself, and that meant that if a companion of the Prophet was collecting the Quran for himself, he had the freedom to put the surahs in the order that he felt is best, or whatever he chanced upon. If he learned a particular surah first because that was his favorite, and then he learned another one second, so he could attach them together in that order because no order was fixed. Of course, nowadays new studies are showing that there is a mathematical principle behind the ordering of the surahs, but that's a separate question. From a traditional perspective, one is not fazed by the discovery of a Quran that shows a different order, because it was known to classical scholars that some of the companions of the Prophet had collections of the Quran with surahs in a different order than as we have them in our particular text today. Mm-hmm. But
so can these manuscripts still be found in Yemen?
Well, these were discovered. A mosque was under renovation, mm-hmm. and it was found that in the mosque roof, some Qurans were stashed for safekeeping as a respectful way of, you can say, burying the Qurans, mm-hmm. Because they were no longer being used. Either they were old or tattered or whatever the case is. And now, with the renovation of the mosque, those were discovered, and then they were taken to they were actually placed under the supervision of the Yemeni authorities, and they were studied by these German scholars. If the verses within a surah were to be changed, if the order of the verses within a surah are changed, then this would definitely affect the meaning, and that would be quite upsetting. but no such thing has been found. Some variations in reciting certain surahs have been noted in some of these manuscripts, but that too is known to classical Muslim scholarship. It is known that the Quran has been revealed in 7 ahruf, as it is said in the classical language, and that meant something like 7 different modes of recitation. And with this idea in mind, Muslim scholars allowed for the Quran to be read in a variety of ways, all traced back through authentic lines of recitation to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself.
Okay, let's move on to the next question quickly. It says, when the Quran mentions a book called Injeel, is it talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or some other book that contains a story of Jesus?
When the Quran speaks about the Injeel, I mean, the different verses might imply slightly different meanings as the context would determine. But generally, the Quran is speaking about a book that was taught to Jesus by God. So the Quran says, وَيُعَلِّمُهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالتَّوْرَاةَ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَالتَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ. God will teach him the book and the wisdom, the Torah and the Injeel. And generally we'll translate that the gospel. But notice that it is in the singular. And since it is something that God taught Jesus, we expect that to be within Jesus' lifetime, and whereas the other gospels you mentioned by name were written after Jesus.
All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
And we'd like to hear from you. Please visit our website, www.quranspeaks.com. Send us your comments, your suggestions, and of course, your donations. I'm Safiya Ali for all of us here at Let the Quran Speak. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu